How have they done it? How have they turned it into a basket case?
They've done it for two reasons, or because of two reasons. One, because of their obsession with constitutional change rather than the good government of Scotland. Their purpose was always independence. It was always a grievance machine. That whatever went wrong, it was always Scotland. It always Westminster's fault. And by the way, Westminster is a euphemism for English. Being no doubt about it, there's an anti-English strain in all of this. It was never their fault. They never did anything wrong. It was always Westminster's fault, even though Westminster pours buckets of gold down their throat every year, and public spending in Scotland is far, far higher per person than it is in England. And the other reason is that they're dominated by the collectivist consensus in Scotland. A left-wing consensus, far more left than than England, in which there was no reform of the health service whatsoever, no reform of education whatsoever, spending more on welfare payments rather than building up the infrastructure of Scotland to fit it for the 21st century. You add all that together, and you have, I'm afraid, north of the border, a country in serious decline. Put it this way, where the plight of Scotland is. In the year 1900, at the end of the 19th century into the 20th century, 20% of the world's ships were built on the Clyde. 20%. Yeah. Now they can't even build two ferries for the islands. I rest my case.
And that, of course, also tracks back to Mr. Yousaf in a previous incarnation as the Transport Minister. Andrew Neil, thank you, broadcaster, chairman of The Spectator, and in today's Daily Mail, former editor of the Sunday Times as well. Listening at 13 minutes after 7 even, Lesley Riddoch, who's a broadcaster, independence campaigner, columnist, and has the podcast, the Lesley Riddoch Podcast, which is on Global Player, joins me now. OK, Andrew's saying that the dreams are buried for a generation at least. Would you concur with that? Morning.
Morning. Honestly, if we just played that last 5 minutes to the whole of Scotland, we'd have 80% independence.
Why is that, Lesley?
A load of absolute rubbish. I mean, first of all, let's just work through the claims there. I mean, amazingly, although I live in the sticks in North Fife, I'm connecting to you via digital media. How on earth am I doing that? In Scotland, we voted to have... Let me just continue, since you let him. We have water in public ownership in Scotland, unlike the disaster south of the border, where 19 water companies, most owned by foreign companies, have reduced your rivers to a slew of sewage. We have the best performing A&E departments in the whole of the UK. We have less privatisation in health, and glory be for that. We have had no strikes in the health sector, no strikes last year in the sphere of transport and rail. So, you know, of course things are not going beautifully, but there's plenty of progress that the people of Scotland, and here's a small point, if Andrew cared to come and live here, he might realise people actually like this so-called collectivist agenda, because solidarity between people and having a public realm is what makes life worth living for most people.